We will now move on to the next session. Private sector steps up social investment trends across Asia according to the social sector needs. And in this session, you will learn key trends in philanthropy and CSR, including the growing number of public-private partnerships for social good from Dr. Ruth A. Shapiro, the co-founder and chief executive officer of the Center for Asian Philanthropy and Society, a research and advisory nonprofit organization based in Hong Kong and working throughout Asia. CAP's mission is to increase the quality and the quantity of private resources going toward doing good. Dr. Shapiro is the primary author of Pragmatic Philanthropy, Asian Charity Explained, published by Progress Macmillan in January 2018. She is the editor of The Real Problem Solvers, a book about social entrepreneurship in America. She also co-authored the book Building Energy Efficiency: Why Green Buildings Are Key to Asia's Future. She has published articles in the Nikkei Economic Review, the South China Morning Post, and Philanthropy Impact, and is a regular speaker on issues related to private social investment in Asia. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Dr. Ruth A. Shapiro.
Sawadika. Thank you very much for having me today, and for Kuntapana, ASEAN, and Thai Bev for being such amazing partners to put on today's program. Thank you, Ronnie, for teeing me up and our work so nicely. I don't think I could have said it better myself, so thank you. I also want to thank Kunchurtsiri and Suchita Lohia, who will be on later, who are also supporters of CAPS, as is Thai Bev, very important, and helps us to do our work. This session is powered by Thai Bev, and so are we. So thank you. So let me share my screen and talk about what we are talking about today. Which is how the private sector is stepping up, and certain trends about philanthropy, CSR, and impact investing around the region. First, we know that that during COVID-19, the world has faced unprecedented challenges. But as Kuntapana mentioned, and Ronnie also mentioned, the problems that we face are not new. It's just that they were exacerbated and accelerated during the last year and a half. Problems such as income, social, economic disparity, that was true before COVID-19, still true now. Climate change, absolutely a problem before COVID-19, still true now. What we're hopeful about is that as the social sector rose to the occasion in the past year and a half, and that includes corporations that are involved in delivering social good, social services, we might have learned a few things about how to partner, how to work together, how to address our shared concerns that hopefully we can use coming out of this pandemic in ways that solve our problems more effectively, more impactfully, and frankly, more speedily, because a lot of these issues continue to accelerate. So let me get to some trends. First, government still matters. In fact, government continues to play the most pivotal role. And how does government do that? In a number of ways. First of all, government talks with money. So when Singapore puts into effect a 250% tax subsidy for individual and corporate philanthropy, it matters. It says that the Singapore government is encouraging individuals and corporates to stand up. It puts its money where its mouth is. Cambodia and Nepal, who are on the other end of the spectrum in our index, the Doing Good Index, don't send that same messages. How else can government help? Well, in 4 out of the 18 economies that we studied, 16 countries plus Hong Kong and Taiwan, there's a National Giving Day. That's again the government messaging that these kinds of activities are useful. Government also puts its money on the table. So in 6 economies that we studied social enterprise ecosystems, we saw that governments in those 6, which include Thailand, put $100 million in 2019 toward social enterprise creation and nurturing. That's real money, and it really matters to move the social enterprise ecosystem going forward. What else can government do? Well, messaging is important. As I just said, when the government puts into effect a good tax benefit, then it's sending a message. But you can see that in Asia, the great majority, don't understand what the government is trying to say. Very few of the people that we surveyed, including the experts, understand the tax implications of making donations. When the government is not clear about what their messaging is, it sends, in effect, mixed messaging. Government can also procure services from SDOs, from social delivery organizations, whether they're nonprofits or social enterprises directly. We can see across Asia that in 2018, 32% of organizations that we studied got government procurement contracts. That's actually down in 2020, the last time this study was released. And you can see that Thailand has some room for improvement here. Only 9% of the organizations that we studied in Thailand received government contracts. That's an opportunity for government to step up. And why is that important? Because when government procures the services from social enterprises and nonprofits directly, it sends the message that the government itself trusts these organizations and wants to see them be sustainable. And that is an important message to send on to the rest of society. Here's another trend. And to use a real estate term that Ronnie and Tapana, both in real estate, know well, location, location, location. What does that mean? Well, we have been living through a pandemic, a global pandemic, which means that no foreign organization, no foreign funder can ride into the rescue when they're dealing with the issues in their own economy. We must look locally. We must generate more domestic support for addressing social issues. We saw even before COVID-19 that foreign funding was going down in Asia. That accelerated in the past year and a half. But even if that's true, Asian philanthropists prefer to work at home. They know that they understand the issues in the economies in which they're operating. They know who the players are, and they understand the solutions that are best going to work. And when we hear from our examples later on from both the corporate leaders and the social, the public-private partnerships, we're going to hear really about tendencies and solutions that are crafted locally that truly understand what's going to work on the ground in their home economies. Next, rising interest in social enterprise and impact investing. That's true. 85% of donors we surveyed show more interest in social enterprise. But surprisingly, although Asia has 60% of the world's population and accounts for 50% of the world's GDP, only 16% of global impact investment funds are deployed in Asia. Most of that comes from outside the region, and most of that is spent in India. So we have an opportunity here, and we're going to learn about what our participants today are doing to mitigate that situation. Asian corporates and Asian investors have an opportunity to fund social enterprises and do more impact investing locally. And 4, there's more expectations on business. That has been even more the case during COVID-19. 8 stock exchanges now require ESG. The Thai stock exchange is requiring ESG education starting next year, which will probably be a precursor to ESG standards actually. So those companies have to care about environment, social, and governance issues. But still, the average budget of an SDO, of a social delivery organization, only 15% comes from corporates. So there's an opportunity there to support local organizations that are on the front lines. In our study, 74% of all organizations have members on their board with corporate experience. We think that's really important because when you have somebody on your board who understands accounting, who understands project management, who understands marketing and HR, it helps you be a stronger organization. And lastly, the key topic we're going to address today is public-private partnerships. 88% of ultra-high net worth individuals throughout Asia say that these are going to become more common. And why is that? Well, let's take a deeper look at public-private partnerships for social good. Why are they going to become more important? Because, as Ronnie mentioned earlier, no sector can solve our problems alone. These are complex problems, sometimes referred to as wicked problems, because there's not one easy solution. The government has a role, companies have a role, and the community and social sector has a role. One of the things we're going to talk about is what makes these public-private partnerships tick. Well, understanding what the strengths of each sector are and leveraging those strengths makes a lot of sense. And when we hear from the 3 examples later this afternoon, one of those examples was government-driven, PDRF in the Philippines. The government said to companies, you need to help us address climate change and catastrophic natural disasters, because unfortunately for the Philippines, they're basically ground zero when it comes to every climate catastrophe. Or you have a company like Khazanah in Malaysia saying to the government, we may have a better way to deliver education, can we work with you? Or you have a hybrid solution, such as the Prasharat initiative in Thailand, where the government laid out some broad remit, and the companies like Thai Bev developed the ways in which it can make the most impact. And we are fortunate to have these examples and to learn more about this today. So why are PPPs for social good on the rise? As I said, governments are asking, directly or indirectly. When in India, Narendra Modi says that he wants people to focus on sanitation, they step up, whether he's telling them exactly to do that or not. Because companies in Asia are pragmatic, as Ronnie said, and do want to work collaboratively with government to address shared concerns. Companies are also realizing that they have a lot to share and a lot of value. It's not only about money. Of course, money's always important, but companies, as I said, have technical expertise. They have skill set. They have tools and skills that we all need, and the social sector particularly, that need to be deployed. They understand profit with purpose, the new paradigm that Ronnie's talking about. We cannot just go for profit alone. And lastly, in Asia, companies do like, and philanthropists do like to work in partnership with government, so PPPs for social good make sense. What are the strategies to make PPPs for social good succeed? Well, I'm going to talk about 2. First one has to do with people. In the 20 examples that we researched, we found that trust and relationships mattered at every stage and at every level of the endeavor. And we're going to hear how that manifests itself from our examples. 2, we understand that in order for a PPP to be successful, each stakeholder needs to feel that there's some benefit in it for them. That they need to understand why they have skin in the game and what is the benefit going forward. And lastly, in 17 out of 20 of our examples, these organizations had clear champions, and Kunta Pana is a stellar example of such a champion. When you have important people in society really champion this organization, this solution, it matters. So the other area is process. Having a clear and simple mission is very important. Unfortunately, it happens that a number of times people say, well, let's just work together. And they throw people into a room and say, okay, we all want to make the world a better place. How are we going to do that? Well, it's a little bit more complicated than that. There's a science to this. It's really important that the effort has a clear mission. It's simple, and that you know who's responsible for what. And as obvious and basic as that seems, it doesn't always happen. So in the examples that we're going to provide, it does happen. And that is step one to understanding how to be more impactful and successful over time. Two, you need to be transparent and accountable so that the communities trust you. Trust is lacking in Asia. We need mechanisms to build trust. In 9 out of the 20 examples, they created their own implementing agency in order to increase trust in what they were doing. And lastly, in a successful public-private partnership, the governance mechanism, the process for running it, builds on the comparative advantages of each of the participants. Government is the only one who can scale, really. Companies bring established business thinking and rigor and ideas, and the social delivery organization understands the mission and the community. All of these need to be brought to bear in ways that are flexible enough to pivot when necessary. Having said all that, there are still some risks. And Asia, during the Asian economic crisis in the 90s, when Ronnie and I started working together on the Asia Business Council, which is where we first met, Kunta Pana, the Asian economic financial crisis showed us that having very cozy relationships with government can have a negative aspect to it as well. So working closely with government for social good is terrific, but we also need to be cognizant of the downside. One, when you're working closely with government, governments can change. And when they change, sometimes the new government may have different priorities. So in a successful social public-private partnership, you need to build in that contingency and have a sustainability plan regardless of which government is in place. Two, the financial sustainability. Companies are not charities. Of course they care about the society. Of course they're committed to the communities in which they're operating, in which they work. But they also need to think about their own sustainability, and many public-private partnerships need an exit plan or a way to shift responsibility over time, financial responsibility. And there can be external shocks and delays. Corruption is a different topic, which none of our examples today showcase that, but we have examples of it, and we need to guard against it and put into place governance principles that really help to mitigate any opportunity for corruption. So how can Asia build back better in the pandemic? Well, first of all, we can embrace the multi-sector approach that we're talking about today. That is, as Kunta Pana and Ronnie said, though, to work together, to collaborate is the only way forward to address our shared challenges. Two, Asia is relatively lucky because companies here can take a longer term view and do. Sometimes because they have a dominant shareholder that's a family or the state that allows them to take a longer term view, but also in this part of the world, thinking in hundreds of years is the norm. So that is a comparative advantage. We need to take a longer term view. We also need to identify and document innovative models and solutions emanating from the region. This, of course, is a plug for CAPS, which is what we do for a living. And we need to utilize improved communication, social media, and technology to increase trust. Trust is an impediment, and we need to get beyond it. And we now have the tools and the governance principles and the heart to get past it. So that is the end of my presentation. This is our study. These are the codes to download the study or our Doing Good Index. And I really want to thank again our partners, Thai Bev and ASEAN, for giving us this opportunity to share our work.